Real-Time 1960s presents Evening Report, a complete roundup of today's news with Joe Rubenstein.
Good evening. In West Berlin, President Kennedy gets a tumultuous reception. In New Jersey, Governor Hughes scores a major coup. In Mississippi, a man is charged with the murder of Medgar Evers. The Viet Cong set traps, Malcolm X speaks out, and Sonny Liston bites back at Cassius Clay. Those are the headlines. The details after this message.
On September 26th at 8:30, 7:30 Central Time, it's the fall premiere of that reigning favorite, Dr. Kildare. Jim Kildare becomes a resident physician at Blair General this year, and Richard Chamberlain and Raymond Massey again star. All the stars and shows are in Star Time, and NBC will send you this colorful souvenir magazine if you'll send your name and address and a quarter to NBC, Box Number 1, Des Moines, Iowa. Got it? Get it.
In West Berlin today, President Kennedy received one of the greatest receptions for any American president ever while traveling abroad. Mr. Kennedy toured 35 miles of the communist-surrounded city while cheering West Berliners, standing 10 deep on some blocks along the president's route, screamed, waved flags, threw flowers, and in some cases, broke through police barriers to run beside the president's car. However, the day had its solemn aspect as well, as President Kennedy saw the Berlin Wall that divides East and West, and the bleak areas beyond the wall in the communist-controlled portion of the city. For the president, it was a day of speeches. Upon arrival, Mr. Kennedy spoke at Tegel Airport. He spoke to the Industrial Trade Union of Construction Workers at Congress Hall. He spoke at the Free University of Berlin and at U.S. military headquarters. However, it was on the steps of the Rathaus Schöneberg, the seat of West Berlin State Senate, that President Kennedy spoke most passionately. Seated behind him at a long table were numerous dignitaries, including Secretary of State Dean Rusk, General Lucius Clay, Chancellor Konrad Adenauer, and Willy Brandt, mayor of West Berlin. A crowd of hundreds of thousands heard the president advocate democracy and self-government.
There are many people in the world who really don't understand, or say they don't, what is the great issue between the free world and the communist world. Let them come to Berlin. There are some who say that communism is the wave of the future. Let them come to Berlin. And there are some who say we can work with the communists. Let them come to Berlin. And there are even a few who say that communism is an evil system, but it permits us to make economic progress. Lass sie nach Berlin kommen. Let them come to Berlin. Freedom has many difficulties, and democracy is not perfect. But we have never had to put a wall up to keep our people in.
The president commended West Berliners for their perseverance in the face of numerous challenges and treacherous moments since the war.
I know of no city that has been besieged for 18 years that still lives with the vitality and the force and the hope and the determination of the city of West Berlin.
Mr. Kennedy closed with a message of hope.
When one man is enslaved, all are not free. When all are free, then we look forward to that day when this city will be joined as one, and this country and this great continent of Europe in a peaceful and hopeful globe. When that day finally comes, as it will, the people of West Berlin can take sober satisfaction in the fact that they were in the front lines for almost 2 decades. All free men, wherever they may live, are citizens of Berlin. And therefore, as a free man, I take pride in the words, Ich bin ein Berliner.
This evening, President Kennedy arrived in Dublin, where he received yet another tumultuous reception. Ireland's president, Eamon de Valera, hailed the American president as the first citizen of the United States, but Dubliners greeted Mr. Kennedy as one of their own, albeit 3 generations removed. At Dublin Airport, President Kennedy said that coming to Ireland, from which his great-grandfather Patrick Kennedy sailed for the New World in 1849, was like coming home.
8 of my grandparents left these shores in the space almost of months and came to the United States. No country in the world has endured the hemorrhage which this island endured over a period of a few years of so many of her sons and daughters, who have been among the best and most loyal citizens of the countries that they have gone to, but have also kept a special place in their memory, in many cases their ancestral memory, of this green and misty island. So in a sense, all of them who visit Ireland come home. So, Mr. President, with the special pride that I feel in my country, which has been so generous to so many immigrants from so many different countries, I want to say that I'm happy to be here tonight.
Tomorrow, the president travels to County Wexford on the Irish Sea to deliver a speech on the quay at New Ross, from which Patrick Kennedy departed 114 years ago. Mr. Kennedy will then visit Dunganstown, where his great-grandfather was born, and where a cousin, Mary Ryan, and her 2 daughters currently reside. On Monday, District Attorney William Waller of Jackson, Mississippi, said he would seek the death penalty for the man charged with the murder of civil rights leader Medgar Evers on June 12th. Byron De La Beckwith, a 42-year-old fertilizer salesman from Greenwood, Mississippi, was arrested Saturday by agents of the FBI. Director J. Edgar Hoover said fingerprints had been found on the telescopic site of a rifle discovered in some bushes near the murder scene. The latent prints were developed by the Jackson police, who then sent photographs to Washington to be checked against FBI fingerprint files. This led to Mr. Beckwith, a Marine veteran of the Pacific War, because his fingerprints, like those of all servicemen, were in the files. Mr. Beckwith, a member of the racist White Citizen Councils, has for many years expressed a deep hatred for Negroes. He broke with his church, the Episcopal Church of the Nativity, because of its pro-integration stand, and then, on the streets of Greenwood, distributed handbills protesting the church's position. On Sunday, Vincent Cassio, a previous employer of Mr. Beckwith, said, quote, "Normally he was a pleasant person, but mention Negroes to him and he would fly into a rage. He hated them altogether," unquote. Mr. Evers' widow, Merle Evers, was asked for her reaction to Mr. Beckwith's arrest. Mrs. Evers said, quote, "At this time, I have mixed emotions. I would rather reserve further comment until I see what form of justice will take place," unquote. In Washington yesterday, the Democratic National Committee announced that the party's presidential convention will take place in Atlantic City, New Jersey, starting August 24, 1964. No such convention has ever been held in Atlantic City, or anywhere else in New Jersey for that matter. In fact, the Democrats haven't held their convention on the East Coast since 1948, when Harry S. Truman was nominated in Philadelphia. The selection was a major coup for Governor Richard Hughes, who had waged a strong campaign to bring the money-making event to the Garden State. Some Democrats had expressed a preference for Chicago, but there were no venues available for the late August date the Democrats desired. Party leaders feel that President Kennedy will derive the greatest political benefit by spending as much of next summer as possible as the nation's leader, and as little as possible as a partisan candidate. Last weekend, the Republican National Committee chose San Francisco for its nominating convention, set to begin July 13th of next year at the Cow Palace. The GOP had considered Miami Beach, but some Republicans were concerned that Cuban exiles there could create problems. I'll have more news for you after this message.
Spills, spots, grease can make cleaning a dirty oven seem too big a job, but not when you clean it regularly with Easy Off Oven Cleaner. To confirm this, Good Housekeeping Institute experts spread Easy Off on grimy oven walls. Let it set, then wiped grease and grime right off. Now, to make it even easier, you can keep ahead of the job. Let Easy Off remove grease before it bakes on. Use Easy Off regularly as the experts do. Get Easy Off.
Here again, Joe Rubenstein.
On Monday, Malcolm X, national spokesman for the Nation of Islam, denounced the Kennedy administration, Negro leaders who attempted to work with the administration, and the entire white race, which he said was doomed to destruction. Mr. X made these charges on a television program called The Negro and the American Promise. Dr. Martin Luther King and author James Baldwin were previous guests on the program, which was hosted by Dr. Kenneth Clark, a 48-year-old Negro psychologist. Dr. Clark asked Malcolm X to comment on Dr. King's nonviolent efforts to seek racial integration in this country.
The white man pays Reverend Martin Luther King, subsidizes Reverend Martin Luther King, so that Reverend Martin Luther King can continue to teach the Negroes to be defenseless. That's what you mean by nonviolent. Be defenseless. Be defenseless in the face of one of the most cruel beasts that has ever taken the people into captivity. That's this American white man. Just as Uncle Tom, back during slavery, used to keep the Negroes from resisting the Bloodhound or resisting the Ku Klux Klan by teaching them to love their enemy or pray for those who use them despitefully. Today, Martin Luther King is just a 20th century or modern Uncle Tom or a religious Uncle Tom who is doing the same thing today to keep Negroes defenseless in the face of attack that Uncle Tom did on the plantation to keep those Negroes defenseless in the face of the attacks of the Klan in that day.
He then criticized a group of influential Negroes, including James Baldwin, Lena Horne, and Harry Belafonte, who had recently met with Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy in New York to discuss racial discrimination in the North.
When James Baldwin recently had a conference with Robert Kennedy, he took Lena Horne, who's married to a white man, Lorraine Hansberry, who's married to a white man, Belafonte, who's married to a white woman, Edwin Berry of the Urban League, who's married to a white woman. And whenever you have a group of black people sitting down with a white man supposed to represent the black masses, you can never get anybody who's involved in any intermarriage in any kind of situation who will be qualified to represent themselves as spokesmen for the black masses in this country. They were representing their own personal desires. They want to mix and mingle so that they can take their wife. They can go any of these places with their wife. They're involved in a mixed marriage.
Mr. X was asked what Negroes in this country could do to gain protection by the federal government from racial discrimination and violence.
You never will get protection from the federal government. That's like King is asking Kennedy to go to Alabama and stand in the doorway, put his body in the doorway. That's like asking the fox to protect you from the wolf. And it is only the Negro leadership, the bourgeois, hand-picked handful of Negroes who think that they're going to get some kind of respect, recognition, or protection from the government. The government is responsible for what is happening to black people in this country. The president has power. You notice he didn't send any troops into Birmingham to protect the Negroes when the dogs were biting the Negroes. The only time he sent troops into Birmingham was when the Negroes erupted. And then the president sent troops in there not to protect the Negroes, to protect them white people down there from those erupting Negroes.
Finally, Malcolm X predicted a racial explosion in the United States.
It's going to explode because black people are dissatisfied. They're dissatisfied not only with the white man, but they're dissatisfied with these Negroes who have been sitting around here posing as leaders and spokesmen for black people and actually making the problem worse instead of making the problem better. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is telling the white man, get this powder keg out of your house. Let the black people in this country separate from you while there's still time.
A new Army jungle boot is being shipped to South Vietnam this summer to protect American servicemen against the rusty spikes and sharpened bamboo stakes of the communist Viet Cong. The guerrillas have been planting these crude weapons, which are often smeared with infectious materials, in rice paddies and on trails throughout the country. This week, Sergeant Major James George of the Air Force's Pacific Headquarters said, quote, "These traps are as potent as minefields and can put a man out of action immediately, sometimes permanently. Needle sharp, they can penetrate the soles of GI combat boots currently in use." Unquote. The new jungle boot in its final form will consist of a molded rubber outsole and a built-in stainless steel spike-resistant layer. Early models of the boot, to be sent to South Vietnam next week, come with a steel insert, which can be fitted into the boot. Sports, right after this.
Red Cross looks to you for help.
When you help, we can help.
On Friday, heavyweight champion Sonny Liston, currently training for his July 22nd rematch with Floyd Patterson, said that after he whips Patterson, he will dispose of 21-year-old Cassius Clay and his big mouth. The talkative Clay's most recent triumph came 8 days ago in London, where he knocked out Henry Cooper in the 5th round, fulfilling his prediction. Afterward, the undefeated Clay said, quote, "Now for that ugly bear Liston, and he'll fall in 8. I'm challenging that tramp, and I'll prove that I'm the champ," unquote. Liston's rebuttal did not rhyme, but it was typically blunt. The champion said, quote, "He needs to have some respect knocked into him. The heavyweight championship and the guy who holds it is a little different from picking on a beat-up old English bleeder like Henry Cooper. Just let that boy be patient. He wants it bad, he'll get it," unquote. This week, Clay was asked to predict the outcome of the Liston-Patterson fight next month in Las Vegas.
Well, I predicted Sonny Liston to win the fight in about 3 rounds. He'll stay the champion until he meet me.
Clay, when asked how many rounds it would take him to beat Liston, said he had revised his earlier prediction of 8.
I predicted 8 on Sonny Liston, but he kept popping off about I talk too much, I need a glove down my throat, and it's going to take a doctor to cut it out, and he made me mad, and I had to cut that prediction from 8 rounds to 6 rounds. Liston must fall in 6. If you like to lose your money, then be a fool and bet on Sonny.
Cassius made one more prediction, that his as-yet unscheduled fight with Liston would outdraw even the motion picture Cleopatra. He added that the current Cleo, Elizabeth Taylor, was sitting at ringside with Richard Burton at the fight in London last week. And that, for this evening, completes our look at the latest news on this Wednesday, June 26th, 1963. Thank you for joining us, and have a great day tomorrow.
This has been your Evening Report, a roundup of the latest news with Joe Rubenstein.